Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle. Above me on the screen, as always, is Joe Clark, and we're coming at you on Wednesday because it is a little bit different of a week. The Steelers playing on Thursday Night Football. The quick turnaround. Will they be able to beat one of their biggest issues of the Mike Tomlin era? Thursday Night Football on the road. I believe, 2-11? Something like that since he became the head coach in 2007. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, has a pretty good Thursday night record. So which force is going to be greater? We're going to find that out tomorrow night. Joe, before we dive in, how are things going on your end?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Oh, it's good. The Thursday night football gives us a little long weekend where not much is going on. So I'm getting down to the lake house and getting away for a couple days. So I'm looking forward to that, but we have a lot to talk about in terms of the Steelers, recapping the Browns game. We're going to talk about the tight end position, which seems to be a kind of a sticking point, a talking point for the last couple of weeks now, and we'll wrap things up by previewing the Bengals game tomorrow night. Joe, where do you want to start with the Browns recap? I'll let you take your pick.
I think the most impressive thing was just kind of the defensive performance. Again, we saw the front seven getting after it with 6 sacks. Nick Herbig had another great game. And I think our big question was kind of answered on how the Steelers would deploy their 3 outside linebackers. I think Herbig led the 3 in snaps. I think he had 50 snaps. So we saw them on the field together at times. We saw them mixing match. And so something we'll probably continue to see going forward. Nick Herbig obviously was also introduced as a starter for the game. They introduced 12 starters. So um, good to see him continuing to excel. Jalen Ramsey got in the action with 2 sacks. Derek Harmon had a sack. Just all around, it was a very solid game for Pittsburgh's front seven. So think there's a lot to build on, and excited to see how they look against Joe Flacco tomorrow night.
Yeah, Nick Herbig now leading the team in sacks. He's on absurd pace and still not anywhere close to a full TJ Watt season worth of snaps. So I've been tracking that number a lot, and I look forward to kind of giving the final results on that because I think we talked about it last week. It's like, yeah, he's on pace for this, but he's honestly been accelerating his pace. So it might even end up better than what my kind of calculated pace numbers suggested, and certainly a 2 sack performance proves that. I think we could be in for another multi-sack performance this on Thursday against the Bengals because that offensive line is not very good. Joe Flacco is kind of a statue. Yeah, he gets rid of the ball quickly, but we'll see if he's able to kind of run that kind of offense with the way the Steelers secondary is playing. So, yeah, Herbig was one of the big stories of the game, no doubt. And naturally, I think as the trade deadline is approaching and there's kind of talk of, all right, Adam Schefter says the Steelers are in the market for a wide receiver. And my kind of biggest hang up with the Steelers making a big trade at the deadline is the fact that their entire offseason strategy was stockpiling draft picks. They intentionally went out of their way to not get rid of any of those 2026 draft picks. They picked up non-compensatory free agents like Darius Slay and Aaron Rodgers and guys that weren't going to hurt their comp pick formula, and they did that with a very specific goal in mind. And so why would they turn around and trade some of those picks now? And so if you have that line of thinking, as many people do, you then pivot to, all right, well, could the Steelers deal a player and do a player for player trade? And naturally, with Nick Herbig performing well, there's a lot of buzz out there about the potential of trading Alex Highsmith. And when I say buzz, I'm not meaning insider buzz. I'm meaning this is just fan chatter about what they would like to see happen. Joe, bad idea, good idea. You think it will happen? Maybe not. What's your input?
I don't think there's any chance they end up trading Alex Highsmith. I think that's just kind of speculation because it makes sense because of how Herbig's played from a larger national media perspective. But the Steelers' pass rush is one of their most valuable tools defensively, and taking away a guy that, when he's healthy, is still one of their best pass rushers and one of their best defensive players really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think you'd be able to really get requisite value in return, somebody to really help the team. So I don't really buy the idea that Highsmith is a legitimate trade candidate.
I agree. I don't think it's a great idea because what happens if Watt or Herbig gets hurt. I mean, yeah, Jack Sawyer has been playing well. I don't want to undersell him. I think, he stepped in when I guess Watt was getting his knee looked at. It wasn't anything, serious. And they just kind of ended up resting Watt for the last, I don't know, what it was, like 10 minutes of the game. Watt was on the sideline. And Sawyer actually played pretty well. He had two very close, very near sacks in a kind of limited share of snaps, and I think one of them, if Dylan Gabriel wasn't a lefty, probably would have been a strip sack for Sawyer. So he was very close to registering his second career sack and getting his first career forced fumble there. But all that said, you don't get rid of Highsmith. I think that this rotation is becoming an asset for the team, and you don't want to get rid of assets. But that being said, what do the Steelers do moving forward with Herbig and Highsmith? And I mean, are they really going to commit another massive contract to the outside linebacker room? I mean, I'm talking more like this upcoming offseason. You have a decision to make with Herbig, and Highsmith's still under contract for 2026. So what do you do? What would you do, Joe?
Yeah, I could see a Highsmith trade becoming more realistic when we get to the offseason. I think then it's something to entertain if you do believe that you're going to have more value with Herbig going forward, which you very well might. I mean, he's been their best. I think he's been their best pass rusher so far this season, and he's younger. So when we get to the offseason, I think entertaining a trade becomes more likely. I do think I agree it's tough because Herbig's going to command a lot of money given the way he's played, and it's tough to have three very highly paid outside linebackers. So, uh, come March, I think the Highsmith trade discussions might become more legitimate. But I just don't see it happening right now. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough if you have to let go of Nick Herbig event like down the line. I don't see that being something that this team really wants to do. He's been a stud, so I really don't think they will let him go because he's just been so good for them. And letting a talented player like that walk just hasn't really been something the Steelers have done unless there's off the field circumstances. So I think Herbig will find a way to stay in Pittsburgh one way or another, even if that doesn't involve down the line maybe having to move on from Highsmith.
Yeah, you don't want to get rid of TJ Watt's, approaching the end of his career, and you want to. I guess the argument to be made is that Herbig probably could return a third round comp pick, and you start to get into that. Like, all right, well, if the Steelers are a rebuilding team, but the defense has always been built around a good pass rush, and the last thing you want is for a scenario where Watt is hanging up his cleats finally, and Herbig's now off the team. Highsmith has kind of been an injury risk lately, and they're probably not going to extend him next offseason. So what? You're building your entire future of the outside linebacker position around Jack Sawyer. I don't know if that's necessarily what you want to be doing. I think it would be much safer to bet on the long-term potential of Herbig at that position. So these are things that'll probably be talked about a whole lot in the offseason, but an interesting discussion as Herbig continues to dominate. Derek Harmon, you touched on him briefly, having a sack in the game. I think he actually had 2 half sacks, so he got in the backfield there a couple of times. That raises his total to 2 sacks in 3 games because, of course, he missed the first couple of games there. That has him on pace for 10 sacks over the course of 15 games because assuming he plays all possible remaining games, that would get him to 15. 10 sacks and 15, you'd got to think that's, defensive rookie of the year type of potential, which it's probably too early to start viewing him in that regard. And I haven't really looked who else is out there who's performing really well. That's a defensive rookie. But yeah, I think I've gotten some questions on, Twitter DMs this week about his potential of kind of throwing his hat in that ring as the season goes on. And I think absolutely right now that is a possibility.
Yeah, no, if he gets to 10 sacks, I think it's going to be hard to give it to somebody else at that point. I mean, that's very good production from an interior defensive lineman. And yeah, he was really good against the run against Cleveland too. I mean, I think it was probably his best game against the run all season. So I think Harmon's really coming along nicely so far, and he's giving the Steelers another really nice piece to a defense that does seem to kind of be finally hitting their stride.
Yeah, I think our Alex Kozora posted a run defense breakdown. I think that was supposed to be this morning. I haven't actually looked yet, but if not, that should be up soon. Um, from what I saw, because I did the rookie report card and watched the vast majority of his snaps, he was holding up very well. He was not getting pushed back. I think I posted one where he, held up pretty well against a double team, and so that's all stuff you like to see. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the Steelers have really improved against the run since Harmon has been back. If you vamp for, or let me just vamp for a second here while I pull up the rookie report card that I did, because I had a nice little stat in there about the run defense with and without Harmon. Let me just get it up here. Okay, since Harmon returned from injury, the Steelers have allowed 84.7 rushing yards per game. When he was out for the first two games, that number was 149.5. And of course, you don't credit that all to Harmon, but also he's definitely helped. So I think that the Steelers defense getting healthy has been a big contributing factor to everything getting back on track. But yeah, Derek Harmon is absolutely what they thought he would be. And I think Terrell Austin just threw out one of those kind of cliche sky's the limit type of phrases for him. And so everything is looking good for the Steelers' first round pick so far. What else from the game? Anything else we wanted to go over with the Browns?
I mean, I just think the offense looked good. Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. I mean, Tyson Campbell got to Cleveland on Thursday, and he had a matchup with DK Metcalf on Sunday. But Rodgers did a good job finding him. Darnell Washington, obviously the first play of the game, he had another chunk gain. So, 3 catches for, I think it was like 3 for 62 or something out of him. But yeah, all in all, I just thought it was a solid game out of the offense. First half was a little rough. They had to settle for field goals, but at least they're getting in range to score, and then they finally hit their stride in the second half. And I think that we need to see a lot more of that going forward.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers admitted yesterday, spoke to the media and kind of admitted the first couple games he was maybe a little too tight with how he was playing, and now he's loosened up a lot, and I think that's starting to show for sure on the field. And maybe that does go back to the discussion of, all right, well, he wasn't really with the team until pretty late in the process, and what, how's that affected things? I don't know, but it is worth mentioning just because he said he was tight for those first couple games. But yeah, his relationship with Arthur Smith has really taken off. I think the first play of the game is good evidence of that. Arthur Smith schemed something up for Rodgers just to be able to put it on the money to Darnell Washington. It was just taking advantage of the Browns film study, basically inserting Darnell Washington in as a lead blocker. It looked like an obvious run look, and next thing you know, Darnell Washington streaking down the field for a 36-yard gain on the first play of the game. That really set the tone for how everything was going to go. The last thing I did want to touch on, because it's been talked about a lot, is the grass, the sod at Acrisure Stadium. Quite a bit of criticism in the local and national media this week after, well, the most obvious example was Chris Boswell slipping as he was attempting to kick a field goal. Poor guy. Barely have any of his misses lately have been his fault, but he's still getting those misses on his record anyways. But yeah, he completely slipped in a divot. I think Miles Killebrew may or may not, that injury may or may not have had to do with the grass. I think a lot of people have talked about it since, saying it was borderline unplayable and dry and just all around terrible. And so I just wanted to bring that up. Joe, any opinions or thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, it's not really an issue the Steelers have had much of in the past, and they were resodding after the game. They maybe should have resodded before the game. Um, but yeah, interesting that it happened. I mean, Pitt's played there 4 times. The Steelers have only played there twice. 6 games getting the field of that condition is not really great. Not really anything you want to hear. I mean, obviously the weather was kind of bad too, which didn't help things. But hopefully it doesn't become an issue going forward, because it can get dangerous out there.
Yeah, I mean, if Chris Boswell had tore his knee up on that, plant leg kind of getting caught in the divot, this would be a whole other situation, a whole other conversation for sure. But glad that they avoided that. Maybe Miles Killebrew, didn't had a significant knee injury there. So, all right, we'll move on to the next topic, which is kind of continuing on the Darnell Washington discussion. And I think a lot of us before the season kind of stacked up. All right, who's going to be the top? We both did the exercise of who's going to get the most receptions in each room, and how's that going to add up to Aaron Rodgers' total. And I think we both had Freiermuth number 1, Jonnu Smith number 2, and Darnell Washington number 3. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you go a different way there?
No, I think I had the same as that. I think I only had Darnell Washington for like 19 catches this year.
Yeah, and he's what's he at now?
He's
Like,
at 6.
yeah, he's at 6, and had what was it, 3 for 80 something, or 3 for 6? I
I
don't
think it
have it
was
pulled up
I
here.
want to say it was 3 for like 62.
3 for 62, including that 36-yarder to begin things. I think he's now second in receiving yards in terms of tight ends on the team, just behind Jonnu Smith. Not very far behind Jonnu Smith overall, ahead of Pat Freiermuth. And so the way things are shaking out right now, I think, Darnell has the fewest receptions, but if you look at the last 2 weeks in particular, it's gotten significantly more slanted towards Darnell. He's had 95 snaps over the last 2 weeks. Pat Freiermuth over the same time period, 36. Jonnu Smith, 54, with 41 of those coming in the most recent game. And so Darnell Washington has really set himself apart. Joe, is it an overreaction to say that Darnell Washington might be the Steelers' tight end 1 by the end of the season?
I don't think so at all. I mean, he's the best blocking tight end on the team, and now he's emerging as a receiver. It's kind of like you kind of ask yourself, what is Darnell Washington doing that Pat Freiermuth or what is Pat has done that Darnell Washington can't do?
Hmm.
And the big thing is always the receiving. And now Darnell is kind of proving he can be that receiving threat. He's a better blocker. So it kind of makes sense the way that things have kind of shaken out. I mean, Aaron Rodgers clearly seems to trust and like Washington. He's gotten him the ball. So if he's continuing to emerge and he continues to prove that, he can be a guy that can pick up chunk yards through the air, then there's really no reason for him not to be the tight end 1.
Yeah, I wish I had done things a little differently before the season, because I did toy with the idea of, I mean, all training camp, all we heard about was, wow, Darnell Washington looks so nimble and athletic, and he's running great routes, and he's catching all these balls over the middle and in the end zone and high pointing things. I mean, it was like a constant barrage of Darnell Washington this, Darnell Washington that. And, I did, think about kind of making one of those bold claims of, all right, is this guy going to end up being potentially the top tight end? I did not end up having the guts to make that call, but I could see it happening for sure. I mean, Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, last week's Buzz File that he does every week, said the Steelers are, someone he talked to in the building basically said they're finding it hard to keep Washington off the field. They can't really justify taking him off the field because what can he, the same thing you said. What is he capable of doing that others can maybe not? I'm getting all mixed up with my words like you did there. I don't know why this is so difficult, but what can he do that other guys can do better? Which I don't think there's much. So, Arthur Smith also talked about kind of him being a technician and improving his hand usage, and how kind of interesting it's been to see Darnell Washington progress, not just as a, like, all right, this guy's massive and just moving people out of the way because of his sheer size, but he's actually becoming a technician and improving his hand placement and kind of, everything that goes along with that. I thought that was kind of interesting. If you look back to the broadcast, was it this past game where the broadcast was talking about him? Do you remember exactly what they said there? It was something about Mike Tomlin and what he kind of thought of the whole offensive tackle thing.
I don't remember the exact thing. I know they said that, they thought that, as a potential possibility at some point, but I mean, the way he's playing at tight end, there's no way he should be moving to tackle.
No, I agree, but I think the specific thing they were referencing was them talking to Mike Tomlin about him being able to play tackle, and I think the quote was they might be able to grow old in that position. Like, he might be able to grow old at tackle. And so
That sounds right.
so it is interesting to hear. I think we've heard it from players, we've heard it from Darnell Washington, but to hear it from Mike Tomlin himself saying that, oh yeah, like this is like a legitimate thing that might happen at some point, is very interesting. And so Darnell Washington's a guy that you keep around no matter what, I think, unless he, starts to suffer injuries and those, like, I guess, concerns about his knees start to crop back up. This is a guy you figure out how to keep around. You pay him whatever you have to, maybe split the difference between tackle and tight end. I don't care. This guy is basically defining the Steelers' offense right now. Anything to add in this section, Joe?
No,
Do you think
so
Firemood's
I think
going
we
to get
covered
more
that.
involved, or like what's?
I mean, I could see him getting more involved against the Bengals. I mean, just historically, that's a team he's had success against, and I could see them. I mean, I think they kind of want him to get him the ball, maybe keep him involved, keep him happy. I mean, they're paying him a lot of money, and that should be a reason to get the guy involved. But he has been good, when he's been given opportunities. But I mean, it's just tough right now because Washington's playing so well that like. Do you again, as Fowler said last week, it's hard to keep him off the field. And I mean, and you can have both of them on the field. You can run double, triple tight end. But I mean, you look at Jonnu Smith, he's probably a better yak guy than Fryermuth. Um, and so it's just kind of tough right now to see Fryermuth having like as big of a role at least as we thought he would before the year.
Yeah, I mean, Jonnu Smith had what, like, was it 800 yards last year? 800 some yards last year. Oh, it would have been the
Yeah.
best Steelers tight end season ever if you plopped his last season and put it in Pittsburgh. And so yeah, I mean, Darnell Washington is proving that he's more valuable than a Pro Bowl player and a guy that the Steelers paid all this money to in Pat Fryermuth last offseason there. So, or was that 2 off seasons ago? Anyways,
It was before last year.
yeah. So Darnell Washington is. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say at this point. I think one more game of kind of this trend, and I don't really see it changing much beyond this. But they do have good depth there, I guess. Like at other positions, and I think it was another one of the BuzzFile things is the Steelers kind of viewed their downfall last year as kind of exhaustion at certain positions. They didn't have the depth, and guys were getting real tired by the end of the year. And so maybe the tight end depth kind of comes into play later down the stretch when, maybe a guy like Darnell Washington who's playing 50, 55 snaps a game, maybe he starts to lose a little steam. Maybe those legs start to get a little heavy, and maybe that's when someone like Fryermuth really helps the team out. But it is puzzling, and I think anyone, I mean, you hear Ben Roethlisberger talk about it every week. Pat Fryermuth needs to get more involved, and he's always been a Fryermuth fan, but I don't know. I don't know if I see a path to it at this very second. There might be a game or two where he just has random, a big catch here or there, but it is difficult to see his role growing moving forward. All right, we'll move into the Bengals preview. I want to start with the injury updates here. Joe, do you have those pulled up, or do you want to take that away?
Bengals, yeah, the two key ones, really the two guys that are at risk of not playing are Trey Hendrickson. He suffered what was originally described as a back injury against the Packers in the first half, missed the second half. Um, it's since been ruled a hip on their injury reports. So they released two estimated injury reports because they practiced last night. But I don't Hendrickson wasn't out there, I don't think. And then Tanner Hudson has a concussion, hasn't cleared protocol, and obviously it's going to be tough to clear protocol before Thursday. And with Mike Gesicki on IR, he's obviously not going to play. So there's three guys that probably aren't going to play. That could be significant because then that's likely going to involve Cam Grandy being their third tight end behind Drew Sample and Noah Fant. So it's going to be a thin tight end room for the Bengals, assuming Hudson can't clear protocol. And obviously, Hendrickson had 3.5 sacks against the Steelers in Week 18 last year. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league, so not having him would be a big, big blow for Cincinnati if they wanted to pull off the upset. So definitely worth monitoring there. I mean, I think Hendrickson is going to do everything he can to get out there. The Bengals are going to do everything to get him out there. But, quick week, short week. After the game, Zach Taylor described the injury as a bad contusion, and then Monday said it was day to day. Really didn't give many details, so kind of vague on what he really is dealing with. But at this point, it does seem probably unlikely that he'd play on Thursday. But we'll see.
Yeah, and as far as the Steelers go, most of everybody on the injury report so far this week has been just kind of rest days. A lot of that going around. No injury concerns to note, really, other than Calvin Austin, of course, is still not practicing from that injury suffered in Ireland. And Miles Killebrew, who should be going to IR pretty shortly here, I would think. They actually brought in a potential replacement for him, George Odom, a multi-time All-Pro special teamer, a guy who has experience on every special teams unit and playing personal protector there on the punt unit, which is something that Killebrew does. So that's someone to watch. Maybe in the next 24 hours or so, you get a roster move with the Steelers sending Killebrew to IR and signing George Odom. That is a distinct possibility. But otherwise, I think Malik Harrison was his 21-day window was started. So he's working his way back from IR. I think he was limited the last day or two. Still hasn't logged a full practice or anything like that. I don't get the sense that he's a guy who's going to be activated this week, but maybe. I don't know. He's another guy who can play special teams as well. So that's something to watch. But am I missing anything? I don't think there was really anything else other than a bunch of veteran rest days.
Yeah, no, that's it.
All right, well, just diving into the matchup itself and not the injuries. We already talked a little bit about the Steelers' kind of Thursday night football record. Let's dive into some matchups here. I think the main focus of this game is going to be the Steelers secondary against the Bengals wide receivers. The wide receivers are far and away the highlight of the Bengals roster, especially with Joe Burrow injured. And I think Joe Flacco has a better chance of getting them the ball than somebody like Jake Browning. There were some comments about, this is maybe the reason why the Steelers brought in some of these guys. Do you know what that quote was there, Joe?
Yeah, I think it was Terrell Austin had said like the Bengals were definitely in mind when the Steelers, made the trade for Jalen Ramsey and signed Darius Slay. Mike Tomlin said that, you better need, he said guys taller than me to defend the Bengals receivers, but he said divisional intimacy plays a hand in their roster moves. So I definitely think that, matching up against T. Higgins, you have Joey Porter Jr., but now you can match Jalen Ramsey against Jamar Chase instead of, last year was Corey Trice Jr., and that did not go well. So, so obviously they kept in mind, having to defend a lot of these top tier receivers, and they made the moves to bring in the requisite secondary pieces.
Yeah, and that secondary finally started to look, like we thought it would prior to the season starting, only allowing 9 points and, blanketing those receivers in Cleveland pretty well, giving Jerry Jeudy a really hard time. I think Joey Porter Jr. got in his head pretty good, caused the penalty, and caused some other issues on Judy's end there. So, hopefully we just see them build on top of that. I think Jalen Ramsey, way back when, right after camp, basically said at the beginning of camp, Mike Tomlin sat them all down in the cornerback room and said Jalen's basically, going to be the top guy, and I think specifically was referencing this Bengals matchup at the time in terms of, who's going to get Jamar Chase. So this is something that they have been thinking about as a room for quite some time. Jalen Ramsey is no doubt itching to kind of show what he can do in this matchup. This is why they brought him in. And, I think it's a good situation to have Joey Porter Jr. on Higgins, and then you got Slay on, I don't know exactly how these packages are going to look if you're going to have a guy like Ramsey on the outside a bunch. I guess Eccles is going to be playing in the slot some, and that might kind of limit snaps for somebody like Slay here and there. I'm not sure, but I think that's going to be the main really matchup to watch. Do you have any others that you're looking forward to? I know, Hendrickson would be a big one, but we don't even know if he's playing.
I just think, Herbig Watt against Demarius Mims and Orlando Brown Jr., Alex Highsmith too. I think just the Steelers have the advantage, I think, in the trenches. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with Joe Flacco. A quarterback obviously can't move around very well at this point.
I think it was last year that it was on Hard Knocks that Mike Tomlin highlighted the Nick Herbig, Orlando Brown Jr. matchup. That was something they were looking for Herbig to win, and he did. He ended up winning it in a big way and kind of helping the Steelers top the Bengals in that 44-38 shootout last year. I anticipate seeing some more of that again, for sure. I think Herbig is a great matchup. Orlando Brown has those, super long arms, and he's a big, huge guy, but Herbig is a little too quick for him. And I think last year Brown was getting away with a lot of kind of false start type of stuff. And it seems like the refs are cracking down on that a little bit more this year. They ultimately did crack down at the end of that game last year, which is when Herbig really started to make his production. So hopefully, Mike Tomlin is in the refs' ears right away, saying, "Hey, look out for Orlando jumping off, or getting off to a false start." Because if Herbig's kind of on a fair, even playing field there with Brown, I think that's an excellent matchup for the Steelers. So absolutely, that's a matchup to watch. Let's get into score predictions here, Joe. Joe Flacco is obviously makes them a little bit better, but is this setting up for a heartbreak for the Steelers and their Thursday night woes continue, or is Aaron Rodgers going to help them get past that?
I think Aaron Rodgers and the front seven are going to do enough. I think it's going to be 27-17 Steelers.
Ooh, 10-point game. What's the line? Was that like 5.5?
5.5.
Yeah. I think I would also take Steelers there, even against the spread. So I'm not sure exactly if I had this mapped out in my head, but I think a 10-point win is fair. I'm not sure if I see the Steelers putting up, I'm going to go 30-20. I like that.
Like it.
All right, well, that is our 3 topics here, but we do have a listener question. This one coming in from, I don't think we've heard from Gordon in Flint, Michigan before, but he sent us a text. If you want to have your question answered on a future episode, 412-254-3145. If I spoke too fast, that is in the show notes as well. You can leave a voicemail or text us. Just tell us your name, where you're from, give us a brief question, and we'll answer it on a future episode. This one from Gordon. After the Bears' Week 6 win over the Commanders, Chris Sims praised the diversity of Ben Johnson's offensive personnel on his Unbuttoned podcast. He cited role players like Zacchaeus Burden, Loveland, I think that might be Cole Kmet, and Manungi getting meaningful snaps. Just based on last week, the Bears had meaningful snaps from 4 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 2 running backs, with 8 players making receptions and 5 with rushes. Meanwhile, against the Browns, the Steelers had meaningful snaps from 4 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and 3 running backs, also with 8 players making receptions and 4 with rushes. It's only 1 week, and without Calvin Austin at that, but do you think Arthur Smith should be receiving more praise for how he's used his personnel this season? And perhaps more importantly, do you think there's too much negativity and consternation from Steelers fans and media about low snap counts and production from guys like Freiermuth, Wilson, and Johnson? Roman Wilson and Caleb Johnson, that is. Is it just a matter of an individual level? It's frustrating to not see guys live up to their contract and draft position. From a team perspective, it seems like a good problem to have and a feature, not a bug, as Dave says. Keep up the great work and look forward to hearing your thoughts. Gordon, thank you for the question. Joe, do you want the first crack at this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Arthur Smith should get more praise, and I agree. I mean, the Steelers are winning, so okay, Pat Freiermuth hasn't been as involved. Roman Wilson hasn't been as involved. I don't think that's necessarily something bad, coming from them. Obviously, Caleb Johnson had the punt return gaffe, but he's better running the ball the last few weeks. So I do think it is kind of just individual frustration, kind of guys you had high hopes for. But the Steelers are winning, and Arthur Smith is using his personnel very well and getting the most out of them. So yeah, I agree that he should be probably getting more praise.
Not too much praise, because the Titans' job just came open, and he's already being linked by some Tennessee media for the head coach role over there. I guess that's a possibility. Since he coached there before, I hope that Smith sticks around for another couple years. I think it would be good to have him around when they get their next quarterback or whoever that is. But I would understand if he wants to move on for sure. But yes, absolutely, I think he's doing a great job. We highlighted that a little bit with how he schemed up that Darnell Washington thing to start off the game. I mean, it wasn't long ago that you could basically go, do your laundry and cook lunch, make lunch during the Steelers' opening drive, because the 10 to 15 scripted plays that Matt Canada was cooking up, I mean, those weren't doing anything, and everybody knew it. And now, the scripted plays are actually kind of a highlight. It's something to look forward to. The Steelers are scoring on almost every drive, whether opening drive, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. They've been scoring the majority of the time. I mean, has it been every time? Maybe they didn't once, I think. But they had, I think, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals. I don't know. I think that, and then they missed one. I'm not sure which game that was. But the opening drives have become a thing, and that's basically exactly on the offensive coordinator. So he deserves a lot of praise. And to your thoughts about the personnel, yeah, I mean, people complain when it's perceived that, oh, this player's only playing a lot because he's signed to this big contract or because they spent this high draft pick on him. But maybe there's someone better on the roster behind them. I've seen people complain about this type of thing in the past. That is not what's happening here. The Steelers are making it very clear that, all right, well, Darnell Washington, he's the lowest paid player in that room, other than I guess Connor Hayward, and he's playing a bunch. And so, yeah, they're doing whatever it takes to win, and I think they all deserve a lot of credit for that right now. Anything to add, Joe?
Nope, I think that's good.
All right, well, that is everything for today's show. I hope you guys enjoy Thursday Night Football. Hopefully the Steelers are 5-1 with a 2-0 division record. Hopefully we're talking about the Steelers dominating the AFC North even more than they already are. I am Ross. That is Joe, and we will catch you guys next time.